He said the farm was home, not just a place he grew up, home. The kind of word you only use when something is so deep in your identity that losing it would mean losing part of yourself. Zach Roloff said that on camera, looked straight into the lens, and meant every syllable. And then he packed his family into boxes and drove to Washington State. Not for a vacation, not for a trial run, permanently. The farm that raised him, the land where his children took their first steps, the property he spent his entire adult life working on, gone. Not because he walked away, because the one person who had the power to make it his decided not to. There is a version of this story where a father hands something he built to the son who never left. This is not that story. This is the version where the son who stayed lost everything. And if you want to understand how that actually happened, stay with me, because this one goes deep. If this kind of deep dive content is what you've been looking for, take 2 seconds right now and hit like and subscribe. This channel exists to give you the real story behind the show. No filler, no fluff, just the truth. Now let's get into it. To understand what Zach lost, you have to understand what he gave up to stay. Look at the Roloff family as a whole. Jeremy Roloff left. He built a life in California, became a photographer, started a podcast, wrote books, and moved on. Molly Roloff left. She got married, moved to Spokane, and almost entirely disappeared from public life, which, honestly, given everything that happened, might be the smartest thing any Roloff child ever did. Jacob Roloff left. He had a complicated, very public falling out with the show, wrote about his experiences, and made it very clear that his relationship with the Roloff Farms chapter of his life was something he was actively trying to close. 3 out of 4 children looked at what growing up on that farm and on that show had given them, weighed it against what it cost them, and chose to build something elsewhere. Zach stayed. That is not a small thing. Zach Roloff stayed on the property, worked pumpkin seasons, showed up for the filming schedules, raised his family there, and did all of it while building a life in the literal shadow of his childhood. He wasn't just emotionally attached to Roloff Farms, he was operationally attached to it. He worked on it, season after season, camera or no camera, tourist traffic or no tourist traffic. He was there. And for years, the narrative around Zach, both on the show and in the audience's perception, was that he was the one, the heir apparent, the son who loved the land enough to stay on it, and who would eventually, logically, inevitably, take it over. The audience watched that expectation build for years, and then watched it collapse in one negotiation. Before we get into the numbers, though, let's talk about what made this personal in a way that went beyond property value and family legacy. Let's talk about Jackson and Lila. Zach Roloff has dwarfism. His wife Tori does not. Their son Jackson was born with achondroplasia, the same form of dwarfism Zach has. Their daughter Lila was also born with dwarfism. And Roloff Farms, for all its complications, was something genuinely rare for those children. A place where their physical differences were not just accepted but normalized. It was a place where their grandfather had the same condition, where their father had navigated the same world, where the infrastructure and the culture and the family history had been shaped, in part, by people who understood exactly what it means to move through a world built for average-sized people when you are not average-sized. That matters. For Jackson and Lila, the farm wasn't nostalgia. It was continuity. It was the safest version of normal they were ever going to have. Tori Roloff has spoken about this, about what it meant for her children to grow up around family members who shared their experience. And the audience, millions of people who have watched these children grow up on screen, understood that. When the farm sale became real, it wasn't just about Zach and Matt. It was about 2 kids who had already been given a harder road, losing the one place that had been specifically, generationally built for people like them. Now, the numbers. Because this story only makes full sense when you follow the money. Roloff Farms is a 16-acre property in Helvetia, Oregon. It is not just a private residence. It is a functioning tourist destination, a pumpkin patch operation that draws significant seasonal traffic, a filming location with a decade and a half of television history attached to it, and a property that has been extensively developed and maintained over many years. When Matt Roloff put portions of the farm on the market, the listing price came in at approximately $4 million. For the specific parcel that included the main farmhouse and surrounding acreage, the part Zach and Tori wanted, the task was in that range. Zach and Tori were not in a position to simply write that check. They were a single-income family with 2 young children, one of whom had required multiple surgeries. They came to Matt with a counteroffer that they believed was reasonable given the family context. And they hoped, according to what they later shared on camera and in interviews, that there would be some acknowledgement that this was not a transaction between strangers, that the decades of work Zach had put into the farm, the seasons of labor, the loyalty of staying when everyone else left, that some of that would be factored in. Matt said no. He said the market value is the market value. He said he couldn't just give the farm away. He said it wouldn't be fair to him, to the farm, to what he had spent his life building. And he said that giving one child a discount would create complications with the other children. That last point is worth examining for a moment because it sounds logical on the surface. Equal treatment of all heirs. No favoritism. Business is business. But here's the problem with that argument. The other children had already left. They had already built lives elsewhere. The discount wasn't being given to one child over 3 equally interested heirs. It was being offered to the only child who had stayed, worked the land, and was making a genuine attempt to continue the family legacy that Matt himself had spent decades building. The fairness argument, when you look at it that way, starts to look less like principle and more like protection. Protection of what? That is the uncomfortable question this whole story keeps circling back to. Matt Roloff's position is not without logic. He built that farm. He bought the land, developed it, ran the business, put it on television, turned it into something worth millions of dollars. He did not inherit a legacy. He created one. And when you spend your life building something, there is a deep psychological resistance to giving it away, even to your own children, because giving it away feels like admitting that your stewardship is over, that someone else is now the person the farm belongs to. Matt is not a villain for not wanting to feel that way. He is human. But here is what makes his position complicated. He did not just decline to give Zach a discount. He put the farm on the open market. He listed the property publicly. He was willing to sell it to a stranger at full price rather than to his son at a reduced price. And when you hold those two facts next to each other, willing to sell to a stranger, unwilling to negotiate with the son who stayed, the business logic explanation starts to have gaps in it. At some point, the question stops being about market value and starts being about something else entirely, about control. Matt Roloff wants to be the next person who owns what he built. And the answer, apparently, was not Zach. Both of those things can be true simultaneously. Matt can be a man who worked hard and deserves fair compensation for what he built, and also a man who, at a critical moment, chose his asset over his relationship. That tension is what makes this story so difficult to resolve neatly, and so painful for anyone who has watched this family for 15 years. There is an episode, and if you have seen it, you know exactly which one, where Zach and Matt sit down together to talk about the farm deal. And the conversation is one of the most uncomfortable pieces of television Little People, Big World has ever aired. Not because anyone screams, not because there is a dramatic breakdown, but because of what happens in the silences. Watch Zach's face during that conversation. There is a specific moment where he is clearly deciding in real time how honest to be, where he opens his mouth and then doesn't say the thing he was about to say, where you can see him calculating what can be recovered and what cannot. Matt, for his part, is composed, almost too composed. He speaks in the language of business logic and fairness and long-term planning. He uses phrases like, "This is just how it has to be," and "I built this." Language that sounds like an explanation but functions like a wall. And Zach, who came to the conversation hoping for a father, got a business partner instead. Watch his shoulders when he realizes that. Watch the moment where hope leaves his face. It happens fast, and the editors let you see it, and it is devastating in a way that a scripted drama almost never achieves, because you know it is real. There are also things said in that conversation about Caryn, Matt's girlfriend and eventual fiancé. There are things said about the future of the farm, about who has been involved in decisions, about what role Caryn plays in the operation. And Zach's frustration is not just about the price. It is about feeling like he had been working towards something for years, and that somewhere along the way the target had moved. That the conversation he thought he was going to have about inheritance had somehow become a conversation about a real estate transaction. The language around the farm had shifted without anyone telling him, and by the time he sat down to negotiate, the terms were already set. After the negotiation failed, the timeline moved fast. This is important. The move to Washington did not unfold slowly. It happened with the energy of a decision that had already been made emotionally before it was made logistically. Zach and Tori began looking at properties in Washington state very shortly after the farm deal collapsed. They found a house. They bought it. They announced the move. And all of that happened within a time frame that tells you everything about where Zach's head was. When someone takes months to leave a situation, they are still hoping it changes. When someone moves in weeks, they have already grieved. Zach Roloff did not linger. He did not wait to see if Matt would reconsider. He did not give the negotiation room to breathe. He bought a house in Washington and he left. And that speed, that urgency, is the most honest thing in this entire story. It tells you that the farm deal was not the reason Zach left. The farm deal was the confirmation of something Zach had probably suspected for a long time. The move was not a reaction to a failed business negotiation. The move was a response to finally having proof. Now look at what happened after. Not on television, on social media. Because the show can be edited. The show can compress timelines, soften conversations, and frame situations to make dysfunction look like growth. But Instagram doesn't edit. Instagram just shows you what people chose to document, who they chose to tag, and where they chose to spend their time. After Zach and Tori moved to Washington, the social media picture became very clear very quickly. Matt's Instagram filled up with Caryn, with farm events, with harvest seasons and new projects and renovation updates, with the life he was building at Roloff Farms going forward. Zach and Tori's Instagram filled up with Washington, with their kids in new spaces, with new friends, with the active, deliberate construction of a life that had nothing to do with Oregon. The tagging patterns told the story that the show couldn't. These were not two branches of the same family staying connected across distance. These were two separate families, living separate lives, occasionally acknowledging each other's existence for an audience that was still watching. The moments where Matt and Zach appear together on social media after the move are noticeable for how performative they feel and for how rare they are. Contrast that to Matt and Jeremy, who have maintained a warmer public presence, or to the relationship between Tori and her own family, which radiates genuine ease. The algorithm really does show you what the edit hides. And what it shows you is that the Zach and Matt relationship post-Washington is not in repair, it is in maintenance. Here is the part of this story that goes beyond the Roloffs, because this is not actually a unique story. Family business inheritance disputes are one of the most well-documented sources of family breakdown in sociology and family therapy research. The pattern is consistent across cultures, across income levels, across industries. A parent builds something. One child stays to help build it. The parent, rather than rewarding that loyalty with succession, holds on, sometimes for ego, sometimes for financial security, sometimes simply because letting go feels like dying. The child who stayed, having sacrificed other opportunities in service of the family business, feels cheated. The family fractures. And what is uniquely devastating about this version of the story is that the child who stayed usually cannot even fully articulate their grievance. Because to say, "I deserved more than the others," sounds entitled, even when it's true. This is called the successor trap. It is the experience of being positioned, implicitly or explicitly, as the heir to something, and then having that position revoked without acknowledgement. The damage it does is not just financial, it is existential, because the person in that trap did not just lose a property or a business, they lost the story they had been telling themselves about who they were and what their loyalty meant. Zach Roloff spent his adult life as the son of Roloff Farms, and then the farm was sold to someone else, and he had to figure out who he was without it. That is not a small thing to rebuild from. Ask yourself an honest question. Is there something particularly painful, something that cuts in a way that is hard to name, about being the person who chose family over opportunity and finding out that the family did not make the same choice about you? Because that is what this story is at its core. Jeremy built a brand. Molly built a quiet life. Jacob built a philosophical distance. Zach built loyalty. He showed up, he stayed, he worked. He raised his kids on the land and believed, genuinely believed, that the belief was mutual. And the cruelest part is that he was not wrong to believe it. He was not naive. Everything about how that farm was presented, both on television and in private, suggested that Zach was the one, that the farm was his future. He did not misread the situation. The situation changed, and no one told him until it was too late to make a different choice. The child who stayed lost the most. That sentence is going to sit in the comment section of this video for days, and it should, because it is true. And it is true not just of Zach Roloff, but of every person watching this who has ever been the one who stayed, in a family, in a company, in a relationship, and discovered that loyalty does not automatically create reciprocity. As of right now, Matt Roloff still owns and operates Roloff Farms. He and Caryn are engaged. The farm continues to run pumpkin seasons, host events, and appear on the show. Zach and Tori are in Washington. Their kids are growing up there. Tori is active on social media, present and warm, and clearly building something real. Zach has spoken publicly about the distance, not with bitterness exactly, but with the measured tone of someone who has accepted something they did not want to accept. The show has continued filming. There have been episodes where Matt and Zach occupy the same scenes, but watch those scenes carefully. Watch how they talk to each other. Watch the difference between two people who are close and two people who are performing closeness for a camera that pays them to do so. The reunion scenes feel like handshakes at a business meeting, cordial, structured, aware of being watched. The easy warmth of a father and son who trust each other is not there. It may not come back. This story does not have a resolution. There is no final episode where Matt and Zach sit down, speak honestly, and rebuild what was lost. There is no moment coming where the farm changes hands, and Zach's staying is finally acknowledged as the sacrifice it was. The farm will likely be sold, eventually to someone outside the family, at whatever the market will bear. And Zach Roloff, the son who stayed longer than anyone, will watch that happen from Washington State. That is the haunting thing about this story. It is not finished. It is not healing. It is just continuing, quietly, with the principals living parallel lives and a camera crew occasionally pointing at both of them and calling it television. Zach Roloff chose family over opportunity for years, and in the end, the family didn't choose him back. If this video gave you something to think about, if any part of this story hit closer to home than you expected, hit the like button, because this took real work to put together and it genuinely helps this channel reach more people who deserve to hear it. And I want to know what you think in the comments. Do you believe Zach and Matt will ever have a real relationship again? Not a television relationship, a real one, where they call each other without cameras rolling, where the trust comes back. I read every single comment, and on a topic like this, I expect the comment section is going to be one for the books.